Thank you so much, Chester. Now, this is not your typical conference, and it shouldn't be. At the Exchange, we want to dive straight into the issues. We want concrete actions and outcomes from this. For me, the definition of success from the Exchange is that we, a year from now, can reflect and say that this happened because we met at the Exchange. And thank you, Ishmael, for joining me on stage. I invited Ishmael because about a year ago, we were in the same meeting, and we were discussing modern agriculture, and we were getting carried away with discussions on satellite imaging, with digital, with sensor technology, and blockchain, and so on. And then Ishmael stood up, and he said, when you think about innovation, think about innovation that solves the problems and responds to the needs of the smallholder farmers rather than creating new needs. And I think that's a very good reminder when we do get our head stuck in the sand to face the realities, and especially if you don't really know that your head is stuck in the sand in the first place, then we need people like Ishmael to stand up and clarify. And I say that because it's very seldom that issues are solved from stage like CEOs like myself. And I've been to many conferences, and I have to admit that sometimes my patience is being tested. For me, it's about getting to actions. And thinking about what we can do from stage, we can address some of the issues. We can highlight some of the challenges that are facing us, like climate change, trade wars, poverty, hunger, the challenge that we have on gender equality. So I think we're all here aware of why we need change, but the challenge is the what and the how. And it used to be growth at any cost, but now it's about growing in the right way. That creates profits for companies, and it creates solutions for society. But in order to respond to that, we need to understand society. We need the voice of the people on the ground. And I think I can safely say that someone that really has been on the ground for more than 30 years now, working on development issues in Africa, Ishmael is the right person. We could have chosen a number of topics today from this stage, but we did choose to focus on Africa. And Ishmael, what is it about growth in Africa that this room of people needs to understand?
Thank you, Svein, for inviting me to share my thoughts with you people. I look at growth in a different way, in my view, than most would, because I want to go back to basics in understanding growth. My take on it is that if growth is not inclusive, then it's not going to be sustainable. And if one looks at Africa, you find pockets of growth, quite a few of them. But one would argue that they are not sustainable. Not sustainable because they are not addressing the basic issues. And what are the basic issues that allows growth to be sustainable and inclusive? It is really addressing the ABCs of life, the fundamentals of life. If the people we are dealing with, the majority of them don't have access to water, to energy, roads, bridges, basic infrastructure, how can you talk of growth that is inclusive? To me, that's where innovation is going to lie. I'm not saying innovation on bio-innovations, digital solutions is not important, but if you don't deal with the basics of life, then forget about the growth that is going to drive the future. It's as simple as that.
So if we come with our, say, European business model and try to transplant that to Africa, we will fail.
Well, they will fail if they are going to be introducing pockets of success that are not integrated into a broader system that allows as many people as possible to grow and prosper. And for that to happen, surely, in my own conviction, we need to start with the ABCs of life.
So, as businesses, we need to think much broader, the whole value chain, and much more collaboration through the value chain than in order to succeed.
Indeed, in a multifaceted sort of problem matrix, there is no way that you are going to address one thing in isolation with other things. So a much more coordinated, comprehensive systems approach to looking at things and addressing things is going to get us much further than we currently are, and is going to be much more sustainable than we currently are.
But Africa has been, say, promising for decades now. Are we at a different point in time now where things are about to change, or are you optimistic, Ishmael?
I'm optimistic, but I'm afraid cautiously so in many respects. But what gives me hope are two things. I think if we invest in innovation around policy engineering, because policy has got the biggest impact at the lowest cost, perhaps at the fastest speed. And the second point really is about addressing the issues of isolation, which is at the core of poverty. Physical isolation, economic isolation, social isolation. And the advent of digital technology allows us to connect and to reduce distances and to be more inclusive. But I just wondered, talking to you, asking you questions, what is it that you see yourself as Yara in Africa? And then before you give me an answer to that, I always say to myself, we tend to see problems in Africa and not solutions. And yet, our colleagues from outside Africa see our problems as solutions that makes business sense. What is it that is different from us that you guys have?
Well, you know, we've been in Africa for more than 50 years now, and I think it's a continent that holds a lot of promise. We are profitable, but not to the level that reflects the amount of resources that we put into it. But again, then we need to look at our mission. And our mission in Yara is to responsibly feed the world and protect the planet. And if we were to change that to say, to responsibly feed the world outside Africa and protect the planet, that's not a very great statement, is it? So I think we have to take it back there. But I do believe that there's a lot of promise in Africa, and that these efforts will pay off in the long run. But we have to think long term when it comes to Africa, Ishmael.
Well, it's heavy lifting stuff, long term, and be more strategic in the investment priorities, and stick to basics is my main message, that we sort it out together, we sort it out in a more comprehensive way, and we sort it out in a partnership way. That's where the innovation should lie.
Right. So, and we could continue for a long time, Ishmael, but we will at the Yara studio later on today. But the key messages from Ishmael and myself is: be concrete, focus on action, use innovation to drive collaboration, use innovation to drive connectivity. That's the key message. And I'd like to round off with the words of the visionary Elvis Presley in this regard. A little less conversation, a little more action.
Yes.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Exchange 2018. Thank you.
Thank you.